216 days. 216 days since meaningful college football entered our TV screens. And this coming Saturday, that streak comes to an end. And with that, we have the hopes and dreams of many college football programs coming alive and coming together to play what, in my opinion, is the most beautiful sport, the most amazing sport in the world. But as this season progresses, only 12 teams will make a path to the college football playoff, and only 25 teams will be a part of the top 25s that you see, not only from the AP poll, but for the very first time ever, I have the pleasure of unveiling a top 25 directly from Redshirt Sports. And at the very end, we'll even talk about possibly a game that could shake this top 25 and possibly shake the college football playoff picture this early in the season. It's going to be an electric week number 0 like we have never seen before. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the Redshirt Sports top 25, of which I am actually a proud voter of. So if you want to go ahead and check out that voting poll, see how I voted exactly, as well as the other fellow voters, you know, if that's something that tickles your pickle, go ahead and check out the link below. Whenever I preview any top game, I'm going to be using the Redshirt Sports top 25 and not the AP poll top 25. So just something to keep in mind. So with that being said, we know that for the college football playoff this year, we did see a slight tweak in the format this year. Yes, we still are going to remain at a 12-team playoff, and what we're also going to see as well is we are going to see a different method in how the top 4 seeds are determined. So if you guys remember from last year, the top 4 seeds are determined by who ends up going and winning their respective conference. It goes to the top 4 conference champions. This year, straight up, it's going to be the best 4 teams. They will automatically get that first round bye, and then it's going to be a straight seeding format after that. Granted, we're still going to have the 5 auto bids for the 5 best conference champions in all of college football, plus the next 7 best at-large teams making up the rest of the field. So aside from that tweak in terms of the top 4 seeds, we're not going to see any change, at least this year, and hopefully it remains that way. But for now, let's go ahead and talk about football, because I'm tired of the off-season stuff. Let's talk about the stuff on the field. What does the Redshirt Sports Top 25 here in the preseason mention in terms of what would that preseason college football playoff field look like? So let's go ahead and get started. So jumping into our top 4 first. We have Texas as the number 1 team in the nation. They will receive the majority of the first place votes in the Redshirt Sports Top 25 ballot poll, followed only by Ohio State. Ohio State will come in at number 2 in the country to start this year. So we will have 1 and 2 facing it against each other in week 1. That's going to be game of the century territory. Ohio State, the only other program that did end up going ahead and receiving multiple first place votes. However, there were 2 other teams that did receive first place votes that are represented in the top 4. Penn State at number 3 in the country. They would be represented as that theoretical at large. So theoretically, if the preseason poll plays out perfectly, we are looking at 2 Big Ten teams in the top 4. And then rounding out your top 4, you have the Clemson Tigers representing as your theoretical ACC champion, coming in as the 4 seed in this preseason top 25. Meanwhile, we get into the rest of the playoff field. So here's what the other 8 teams look like, and an interesting caveat in the Redshirt Sports Top 25, because there was actually a tie between the 5th seeded team and the 6th seeded team. There were a tie in the exact number of points that each of these 2 schools received. So in situations like that, where there actually is a tie in the greater poll, what I will do in those situations is I will actually defer to my own ballot in terms of who would be hypothetically seeded over the other team because you can't have 2 5 seeds in the in the college football playoff, right? So I had Georgia ranked number 5 in the country, and then I actually had Notre Dame ranked number 6 in the country to start this season out, which means that Boise State, who does come in ranked 21st in the country, but because they represent as the 5th best conference champion in college football, and not to mention you would also see them being the highest ranked group of 5 team in the country as well, you will end up seeing Boise State getting that 12 seed hypothetically and go and play against Athens in that 12-5 matchup. So that means with the ramifications of that, instead of having a group of 5 team come to your home field, and Notre Dame is still going to get a home game in the first round, being the 6th seed, instead, what you're going to get is you're going to be playing against the projected Big 12 champions in Arizona State. So Arizona State would go up to South Bend, Indiana to play Notre Dame in a first round matchup. That would be a really fun one, just to see the battle between Kenny Dillingham and Marcus Freeman. That would be extremely exciting to see. Then we would have the 7th seed in Oregon. They would get the 7th seed in this preseason top 25. They would take on Miami, who would get in as the 10 seed and be one of 2 ACC teams that do make it into the playoff, which spoils it a little bit. So Oregon, Miami in Eugene, and then rounding things out, you got LSU hosting Alabama. So LSU would be the 8th seed in this preseason top 25, as well as Alabama being the 9th seed. So in total, from this preseason top 25, as well as that best of group of 5 team that is available, you would in fact have 4 SEC teams in Texas, Georgia, LSU, and Alabama. Big Ten gets 3 with Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon. ACC gets 2 with the inclusion of Clemson and Miami. Arizona State would be the sole Big 12 representative, and then you would have the Independent and Notre Dame, plus the Mountain West once again being represented in the college football playoff through the likes of a Boise State. Now, let's go ahead and check out the rest of the top 25. So, starting at number 12, so Illinois would actually be the last team out. They would come in number 12 in the nation. Granted, I actually think Illinois is a little high in my opinion, to be honest with you. I had them down in the 20 to 25 range, which I know sounds pretty controversial when mentioned out loud, but I thought Illinois had the benefit of winning many of their one possession games, including a scare against Purdue during the course of the regular season. Plus, you do have to realize that Illinois does lose a couple of their top targets on the outside as well. So between that, Illinois really having a lot of those one-score games bounce their way, plus Illinois as a program not having as much of a benefit of a doubt as other top programs. I think Illinois is a little high at 12, but they would represent as the last team out of the college football playoff picture. Just looking around to see other things of note, SMU at 16 is another program that I do have a little high as well. Just got to see them compete against some of the great to elite programs in college football, because what we saw from SMU is that they looked really good throughout the regular season, but when they went up against a great to an elite program such as Clemson, or when they went up against BYU, or even they also went up against Penn State in the playoff last year, they didn't look very good. They didn't look nearly as sharp, and they couldn't find a way to win many of those games. Kind of the ACC version of Penn State, if you think about it, which, yes, SMU overachieved quite a bit, but at the same time, looking at SMU being able to win a lot of their games last year and finding their way into the playoff in spite of losing the ACC championship, but when it comes to those big games against top opponents, that it's a different story. So I had SMU lower down in the 23 range, but for Redshirt Sports, it was decided they would be up at number 16 for the time being. As we take a look at the rest of the top 25, Texas A&M, I think Texas A&M is a little low at number 20. I have them as a top 15 team in the nation. I am a really big believer in what Mike Elko is building. They should have one of the best offensive lines in the SEC. A developing Marcel Reed, who really showed some signs of life towards the end of the season. I think he'd be one of the more fascinating quarterbacks to watch in the SEC, combined with, again, Mike Elko, I think, being one of the best coaches in the SEC, given his track record at Duke and what he was able to accomplish in that first season. I think Texas A&M is really building something special. I know some folks probably have some Aggie fatigue, being hyped up in the preseason and underperforming, but I think this is a year where we really do see Texas A&M break through. So they're at number 20, but I have them a lot higher as a top 15 team. Same thing with Florida. I think Florida is a little bit low as well, out here at number 19 as well. The Florida Gators, I have them as a borderline top 10 team. You see what happened when DJ Lackley became the full-time starter. When Grant Mertz was no longer starting for his team, it became a different squad overnight. DJ Lagway in the games that he played in last year was 6-1, including a massive bowl win, a dominant bowl win against Tulane to end the season. And the only loss was to the Georgia Bulldogs, who would go on and win the SEC last year. And the only reason he lost was because he got hurt in the middle of that game. So I think this poll is trying to split the difference between a healthy DJ Lagway and a Lagway that, misses a good chunk of the season, just kind of splitting the difference. But I do believe in the upside of the Florida Gators. I had them as a borderline top 10 team. I think they are that good this year. I think they're going to do some special things. And then taking a look at a couple of other teams of note. So a couple of teams in here that I actually didn't rank in the top 25. So Iowa State at 22, I actually did not rank Iowa State in my top 25. I'm actually am a little bit higher on Texas Tech, who didn't make the list. Had them slotted in at where Iowa State is currently at. Really liking what they're building out there in Lubbock, Texas, and I think the upside is a little bit higher, even though Matt Campbell is certainly a proven commodity alongside Rocco Beck. And then Georgia Tech does come in at number 24 in the nation. I didn't have Georgia Tech initially ranked in my top 25 either. I think that this is a team capable of, making a run at the ACC championship, as well as putting themselves in that CFP conversation as the season goes on. But Georgia Tech, for as much excitement as they had last year, this was a team that finished 7-6. So I like Georgia Tech. It's not that I don't like Georgia Tech. There's just some teams that I think are a little bit more proven, and just frankly that I like a little bit more. So I'm not dismissing Georgia Tech as a top 25 team. They just have to prove it to me on a more consistent basis. A couple of other notes here. Oklahoma at 23. I think that's low as well. I think they're going to have one of the more dynamic backfields in the SEC with John Mateer at the quarterback, as well as bringing in Jaden Ott for the transfer portal too. I think that's going to be a really fascinating backfield duo, and I don't think anything is going to happen to Moneyline Mateer as a result of that screenshot that we saw on the Venmo from 2 to 3 years ago. USC, I think has some merit in terms of being ranked as well. I think the defense should be much improved, and Jordan Maeva is a quarterback to watch in the Big Ten. So that's just kind of my reaction to this top 25 as a whole. Let me know what you guys think of the first ever Redshirt Sports Top 25. If you like this poll, definitely bring all the credit over into my direction. If you have some criticisms about this particular poll, please go ahead and direct it over to the fellow posters, and I will have a link to this very poll on the website on Redshirt Sports, so that you guys can go ahead and check that out. But before we preview, and we have, so that does leave us with 3 top 10 matchups that we are going to have in week 1, which I'm extremely excited for. We're going to go more in depth with them next week, but those 3 top 10 matchups are obviously going to be Ohio State and Texas. The 1 and 2 matchup, really game of the century territory and potential. Clemson is going to be hosting LSU in the Battle of Death Valley. Clemson really trying to get off to a better start. We haven't seen them get off to a better start, a fast start in recent memory. And the same could be said for LSU under Brian Kelly's direction. So definitely a big test there. And then Sunday night, we are going to have Notre Dame travel down to Miami, Florida to take on the Miami Hurricanes. So we're going to have two top 10 matchups on Saturday for week 1. And then the Sunday, so August 31st, we'll have Notre Dame and Miami. So 3 total top 25 matchups confirmed for week 1, because we're not going to push a bout out after the week 0 games, since the majority of the country has not played. But that doesn't mean that we don't have any top 25 games happening here in week 0. Now, before I get into week 0, quick look here at the others receiving votes. So, not going to read this entire thing because I know that you guys can read, or I hope that you guys can read, right? If you need help reading, let me know. I got your back. This is a safe space. But Texas Tech was almost ranked. They did receive 24 votes. For those curious with how close the gap is between Tennessee and the others receiving votes, so Tennessee came in as the number 25 team in the nation, which that's another thing too. I think Tennessee should be ranked a little bit higher. I think getting rid of all that drama in the offseason that Nico was building up over the offseason, and bringing in a passer that might be a better fit for Josh Heupel's offensive system, I think that's actually going to improve dividends. So I think Tennessee is going to surprise some people. I know people are down because of Nico being a 5-star quarterback, leaving the program. That's always a hard pill to swallow. But I thought they did a good job replacing in the transfer portal. And I think they'll still be pretty good defensively, too. So I think Tennessee can certainly surprise some people. I have them as the 20th ranked team in the nation. But anyway, so Tennessee received 38 total points in this Redshirt sports ballot, which is a ballot consisted of 11 voters, including myself. And then Texas Tech, you can see, has 24 votes. So it's a relatively small gap, 14 points separating Tennessee and Texas Tech. And then a few other programs that are pretty close to breaking into this top 25. You got Louisville receiving 22 votes, Baylor at 18, Utah at 15, and then Tulane would actually come in as the second best group of 5 program in the country. They are receiving 10 votes. So that is your breakdown of the Redshirt Sports top 25. But that also means that we got top 25 matchup this week. You see it on the screen. You already know what time it is, baby. We, for the second year in a row, we're gonna get a ranked Farmageddon to start the 2025 college football season. You absolutely love to see it. And to be honest with you guys, even though I don't fully agree with Iowa State being ranked in the top 25, at least initially, I still can't think of a better way to open up a brand new college football season within the confines of week 0, because this is a game that has so much importance on so many levels, right? So not only does this game obviously have importance within the top 25 and Kansas State, being teetering on that college football playoff picture, being one of the last team outs as of right now, in Iowa State, trying to gain respect from that perspective. But you also got to think this is a Big 12 conference game too. So this game could have a very pivotal factor in terms of who could be playing for the Big 12 championship at the end of the year. So there's major implications in that, with Kansas State being one of the co-betting favorites, alongside a few other teams, including Arizona State, Texas Tech. Utah is up there as well. Utah getting a lot of love on FanDuel. And then Iowa State is in that second tier, which, if you really take a look at the entirety of the Big 12, the gap between the best Big 12 team and the worst Big 12 team in that conference, it's a smaller gap than what you see in any other major power conference. So it's a chaotic conference, which means all of these conference games absolutely matter. You gotta bring your A game. If you have a down game, you're not immune to losing to really any team in the conference. You can't just roll the headgear out and get ready to go. That's just not how it works in the Big 12. But above all, this is a rivalry game, guys. It's a little bit of a rivalry game that's under the radar because historically we haven't seen too many times where Kansas State and Iowa State have been good at the same time, which is why it hasn't received as much national attention primarily for that reason. But this is one of the longest uninterrupted rivalry games in the entire nation. This is a series that dates back all the way to 1917. So we had a First World War, and then we had a Second World War, and a bunch of other stuff that happened over the years, COVID included, more recently. But in spite of all that, Iowa State and Kansas State always played each other. And Iowa State right now, not only do they hold the edge in terms of the recent memory, we did see these two teams obviously play last year, and Iowa State won 29-21 being the final score from last season. But this Iowa State squad also holds the edge in terms of the all-time record between these two teams as well. And it's a very slight one. Iowa State has a 54-50 edge with 4 ties brought in there. So it's a very close series. Both teams can win in any given year. It's always going to be like that regardless of how good or bad both teams are. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at each of these teams, and then we'll dive into my actual prediction and how I think the game is going to go in Dublin, Ireland, which don't love the fact that this game is happening in Ireland. This is a game that should be happening on American soil. Just a general, I don't think college football should be exported overseas. I think that's more of an NFL thing because you can't export the tradition and the pageantry of college football. It doesn't work as well as bringing the NFL product over, which mainly relies on the quality of the football itself, right? So first, let's take a look at Iowa State. Again, coming off of a Big 12 regular season title. Things didn't work out in the Big 12 title game. They got blown out by Arizona State, but they were able to bounce back. They won the Pop-Tarts Bowl against Miami, beating a half of Cam Ward, notably, and earning a top 25 finish in the final AP poll of the season. And this is a coaching staff that has a lot of continuity as well. Under the 10th year head coach Matt Campbell, he's going to have some good players to work with, and that includes most notably Rocco Beck, the junior quarterback, who's going to be looking to build on what was really a prolific season for the junior quarterback last year. 3,800 total yards and 33 total touchdowns. And while there is some open battles being worked through in these final stages of fall camp, this is still an Iowa State team that's going to have a solid mix of experienced names that have starting experience on this roster, as well as rising stars that might be flying under the radar. But the X factor for Iowa State, not only in this game in particular, but in terms of the success of the Iowa State Cyclones this season, I think is more so going to be on the defensive side of the ball. We know Dominic Orange, that nose tackle for the Cyclones, is an absolute stud muffin. But can the rest of the defense elevate around Dominic Orange at the same time and improve in terms of their run defense? Because they did struggle against the run last year. That's going to be really important not only in this game, but for Iowa State going forward as they get deeper into the college football season. It's particularly important in the context of this Week 0 matchup because you are looking at a Kansas State team on the other sideline that has one of the most physically gifted quarterbacks in the Big 12, in my opinion, in Avery Johnson, who doesn't have the same stats as Rocco Beck. Avery Johnson came out with over 3,300 total yards, so definitely not a scrub by any means, but didn't have the same production as Rocco Beck. But you look at his dual threat ability and what Avery Johnson can do, he is so dynamic. He is always an absolute problem for opposing defensive coordinators. What's hold back Kansas State a little bit in the past, and hopefully that gets addressed over the course of the offseason and going through into the season, is really that consistency for Avery Johnson, particularly in taking care of the football. And I think that development does happen. I think we see that right in front of our eyes starting in week number 0 because we do have a very good head coach in Chris Kleiman on the sideline. And it's because of those two guys in particular that Kansas State is going to enter the season with very high expectations, as they are, like I mentioned, the co-favorites to win this conference alongside Utah and Arizona State per our my favorite betting source in the on FanDuel. That's my go-to in terms of betting. But particularly their defense, I think particularly in the trenches, they're viewed as an imposing front seven, which looks formidable. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the model is showing us, as well as what FanDuel is telling us as well. So actually, between when I put this graphic together and when I just checked FanDuel, there is a slight change. So Kansas State is actually now a 3.5-point favorite on FanDuel, but the power rating models that we have here on College Football Red Zone actually like Kansas State even more than that. So Kansas State is viewed as a 5-point favorite. And taking a look at both Iowa State's roster and Kansas State's roster as well, I'm actually am leaning towards my creation in the power rating model. And I actually think that I would lean towards Kansas State winning in this neutral site clash in Ireland. Just taking a look at both of these teams, what we mentioned for both of these teams, just being stout in that run defense. And while Rocco Beck is definitely a dual threat in his own right, he's not a traditional pocket passer that you would see in the 2000s and the early 2010s. You know, Rocco Beck he's a mobile guy. You know, he's not going to be a statue in that pocket. Let me make that extremely clear. But I think that Kansas State is going to be better equipped to deal with that rushing attack than what Iowa State is going to be dealing with that rushing attack, with the exception of Dominic Orange, especially, even though he is coming back. But obviously, I would have a really difficult time thinking that this is going to be one of those games where you would see a blowout. I would be very surprised if there was a blowout on either side. Now, I've been proven wrong before, but that's just my gut feeling. But what I do expect is this game to be highly competitive. This is going to likely be a one-possession game deep into the fourth quarter, and just who's going to make those plays towards the end of the game that is going to push them over the edge and start the season off 1-0. And at the end, I think Kansas State is a little bit more of a complete roster than what Iowa State has. And so I am going to say that Kansas State, they're going to get some revenge here on Saturday to kick off the college football season. It's going to be a competitive battle all the way through. I'm calling it as a 27-23 victory in favor of the Kansas State Wildcats. But guys, regardless of how this game goes, I'm very excited that this game is going to be kicking things off in terms of the 2025 college football season. And I'm just happy to be done with the off-season talk. And let's just go ahead and get out there and decide these games on the fucking field.